Ever been shot in the face or torn off your own mangled fingers and still wanted to get back into the fight? Yeah, me neither. But Sir Adrian Carton de Wiart, the Belgian-born British officer with a reputation as a fire eater, he did those things. And with all his stories, he's likely a great guy to have at dinner parties, provided the frequent swearing and the gruesome injuries don't put everyone off their food. Welcome to a World War II in real-time bio special where I look at key figures from the conflict and find out what makes them tick. I'm Indy Neidell. Adrian Carton de Wiart is born in 1880 in Belgium to an aristocratic family. At the age of 10, he goes to English boarding school, and from there he enters Oxford University. However, with the outbreak of the Second Boer War in South Africa in 1899, he gives up on his education and he joins the army. It is here that he receives the first wounds of his career, one in the stomach, one in the groin. But the injuries do not dissuade him from fighting, and he is convinced he has found his calling as a soldier. When the Great War breaks out in 1914, he is on a boat to British Somaliland to put down anti-colonial resistance there. In November, he leads an attack on an enemy fort deep in the mountains. According to an eyewitness account, despite being shot in the face once already, he charges forward, not even breaking his stride after being shot again in the ear and the arm. The injuries mean that he loses his left eye and part of his left ear. But this does little to dampen his enthusiasm. In February 1915, he goes to the Western Front to Ypres, Belgium. 3 months later, he is wounded in his left hand. I will let de Wiart himself explain what happened next. My hand was a ghastly sight. 2 of the fingers were hanging by a bit of skin. All the palm was shot away and most of the wrist. For the first time, and certainly the last, I had been wearing a wristwatch, and it had been blown into the remains of my wrist. I asked the doctor to take my fingers off. He refused, so I pulled them off myself and felt absolutely no pain in doing it. Despite now missing one working hand, he sees the Great War through to its conclusion. You can trace his career by following his injuries. Shot through the skull at the Somme, the hip at Passchendaele, the leg at Cambrai, the ear at Arras. He receives several decorations for his ordeals. The Belgian Cross of War, the Order of St. Michael and St. George, and most notably, the Victoria Cross. This is all, by the way, before he has reached the age of 40, and his career will only get more colorful. His exploits have caught the attention of British Minister for Defense Winston Churchill. Churchill is keen to counter the spread of communism and hopes to send military aid to Poland in its war against Soviet Russia. But British Prime Minister David Lloyd George will only allow a small advisory mission. De Wiart is sent as second-in-command in February 1919, but he won't really achieve much. The Poles win anyway in 1920, and de Wiart decides to retire in 1923. He begins a new life as Polish gentleman on the Pripyat marches, spending virtually every day hunting. But when war looms again, he is recalled to service. In July 1939, he is put in charge of another military mission. He begins to advise Marshal of Poland Edvard Smigły-Rydz, but his guidance often goes unheeded. He believes that the Poles should be prepared to order a general retreat behind the Vistula River and settle in for a protracted guerrilla war against Germany should they attack. But Smigły-Rydz is adamant that such a move would be cowardice and refuses to budge on the matter. De Wiart is successful in another area, though, convincing the Marshal to move his best ships to Britain at the end of August to avoid capture. It means that Polish sailors can carry on fighting throughout the war. But this is a small victory, and de Wiart is forced to flee to Romania and then to Britain. But he will soon be transferred to Norway, where he finds himself again frustrated. He is put in charge of securing Trondheim in April 1940, after the German invasion. Deep snow and German planes make it difficult to move large bodies of troops, but he begins gathering his forces at Nasmos. To his fury, however, one French unit landing there opens fire on enemy aircraft, alerting the Luftwaffe to the Allied presence. Bombs rain down, but if de Wiart is scared, well, he does not show it. He coolly lights a cigarette and remarks, "Damn frogs, they're all the same. One bang and they're off." His Norwegian frustrations only continue. He's often let down by officers and troops who are poorly trained for winter warfare and have inadequate supplies anyhow. His calls for more artillery and more anti-aircraft guns go unheard. In fact, his plans are pretty much ignored by his superiors, and the whole operation is a disaster. Of course, de Wiart doesn't exactly ingratiate himself to his fellow Englishmen. Though an aristocrat himself, and most often liked by the people who get to know him, his demeanor is thoroughly rough, direct, and rude. Profoundly frustrated, and seeing the British fail at every turn, the usually recklessly aggressive de Wiart requests an evacuation at the end of April, which is approved in early May. He is transferred to Northern Ireland, but relieved of his position after only a month. Disheartened, de Wiart believes his military career to be over. But it's just getting exciting again. Now in his early 60s, he's sent on a mission to Yugoslavia at the beginning of April 1941. Adolf Hitler is preparing to invade, and the Yugoslavs could use his help. He flies to Belgrade via Cairo, but the plane's engines fail, and it crash lands off the coast of Italian-controlled North Africa on the 5th. The plane's emergency dinghy is shot to pieces, and there are no flares on board, so the British sending a rescue mission have no hope of finding him or his crew, who are forced to swim to shore, where they are soon captured by the Italians. He will spend the next few years in captivity, attempting to escape 5 times and actually succeeding once, remaining at large for 8 days before being recaptured. He will then be used as a bargaining chip in Italian negotiations for peace. His last big assignment will be as advisor to Chinese Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek, after which he will finally retire at the ripe age of 66 in 1947. In his long career, he has sustained literally lifetimes of injuries and demonstrated exceptional bravery. He always gives the impression that none of it has fazed him. How much of that is retrospective bluster, we will never know. But still, the attitude of the old warrior can be captured in the simple summation he gave in his autobiography of his Great War experience. Frankly, I enjoyed the war. If you'd like to learn about a large number of people who came home from the war without the cavalier attitude of de Wiart, then check out our Between Two Wars video on disease, war, and the lost generation. You can click on that right here. You can also click on subscribe to never miss an exciting episode of World War II in real time or exciting specials like this bio special. I will see you next time.